Capitol Report is a production of Senate Media Services.
On this week's program, one lawmaker calls for an end to home equity theft. Plus, we talk with key lawmakers about improving the lives of families and children and new efforts to support Minnesota's clean and renewable energy future. Stay tuned for this week's Capitol Report. Welcome to this week's program. I'm Shannon Loehrke. Last summer, the state of Minnesota unveiled a climate action framework to lay the groundwork for better resilience in the face of climate change. Senator Nick Frentz is the chair of the Senate Energy, Utilities, Environment, and Climate Committee, and he joins me now to talk about some of the initiatives in the state's next two-year budget that represent investments in climate resilience. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, Shannon, good to see you again. Thank you for having me.
As I prepared to talk to you, I noticed an article in the New York Times called, "In Norway, the electric vehicle future has already arrived." According to the article, 80% of new cars sold are EVs, the air is cleaner, and the streets are quieter, though charging remains a problem. This new law here in Minnesota, the Environment and Energy Budget, offers a $2,500 rebate to Minnesotans who purchase a new EV, $600 for a used one, presumably until that funding is exhausted. How far will this investment move the needle?
Well, the actual dollars will move the needle a little, but the spirit of it, I think, will help move people a lot. You combine the news that we're seeing about climate change with the rebates and the incentives to go electric, and I think you'll see more and more Minnesotans choosing to go that way. You may know that our sales nationwide are about 6% electric vehicles for new sales. That's almost a doubling of what it was a year and a half ago. So Norway is ahead of us, but we're both headed in the same direction. And it's worth pointing out that the electric generation sector has shown great improvement in carbon emission reduction. Not so in the transportation sector. So there's a lot of upside if we can get to electric vehicles, not just in Minnesota, but nation and worldwide.
Well, then on that note, the new law also supplies funding for schools to purchase electric buses, for car dealers to make infrastructure changes necessary to sell EVs and also to train their staff. Also, the law indicates a state preference for electric vehicles or hybrids for its own fleet. What kind of impact will these changes have on the transportation sector?
Well, I appreciate you mentioning the electric buses because it's got a couple impacts. First of all, the money that's provided in the omnibus energy budget bill will move the needle some on electric buses. They're expensive, but they're clean. They cost less to operate, and of course, they're much healthier. That's the second benefit, is we don't need a bunch of diesel fumes wafting into our school kids as they wait by the bus. So we get a little bit of a public health benefit. But to your real question, that would move the needle 2% maybe for the school bus fleet if all you're measuring is the money. But what we want to continue to create is an environment where schools, bus companies move that way for the betterment of the health and long-term carbon emission reductions. And I think that'll be a good start.
I imagine that there are people who are interested in electric vehicles but live in homes that will require an upgrade to their electrical grid in order to support charging. There's other electrical upgrades that people are interested in: electric stoves, electric dryers, heat pumps. And taken all together, those things may require changes to a home's infrastructure. This new law sets aside money for grants to residential homeowners for electric panel upgrades and for heat pumps. What do homeowners need to know?
Well, a couple things. First of all, you said it better than I could, which is we're trying to make people's homes compatible with the changes, not just for electric vehicles, stoves, heat pumps. Those are more efficient, they're healthier, and they're going to be lower cost. So the heat panel grants allow a home, preferably a low-income family, that can get a new panel and have the state partner with them on the cost. That opens the door to a lot of things, and by the way, also has the benefit of improving the value of the home. So one of our goals overall in the budget is to try to lift up those who have a little less, and the heat panel grants, the electric panel grants rather, is one of the ways you can do that, and hopefully provide environmental benefits as well.
And so then for heat pumps, that's another option. There's also weatherization. So there's money to help people make their homes cleaner.
Yeah, great point about the pre-weatherization money. Actually, the largest individual chunk, almost $40 million in the bill to allow homes to be pre-weatherized. It's a little bit nerdy, but federal money comes in to help weatherize homes. That makes them much more energy efficient, which means we don't have to produce that energy, lowering carbon emissions. The pre-weatherization, think vermiculite, think windows, is money that the state is going to help these homes to get ready to get that federal money. And the easiest way to reduce emissions in energy production is not to have to produce the energy. So we have a lot of upside there with pre-weatherization, and that's why the House and Senate both made it a priority, and that's why it has that $40 million, which is a large chunk.
And so for people who want to read about how to get information about this, is it the Department of Commerce website that they would go to?
Yes, yes. And I think what they'll find is a fairly user-friendly process.
I was also interested to see that there's funding for a number of studies, including how much energy storage capacity is needed to meet the 100% carbon-free standard, funding to determine the resiliency of the electric grid, money for a feasibility study to determine if Minnesota's iron resources may possibly work for long-term battery storage. Will the answers to these questions then determine the next steps for our state?
Yeah, I think they will, and I'm glad to see those studies. You know, we're not as smart as we think we are. We need to look at these, and sometimes that takes experts, consultants, engineers to come in and say, hey, here's what's working. I appreciate you mentioning storage, because we have storage capacity now for 4 hours. So if it's Shannon Loehrke utility, they can store energy, wind, solar for 4 hours. But that's not really a usable amount. You need 70, 100 hours. And so you mentioned the iron ore and form energy, looking at the possibility of much less expensive storage that would give us 100 hours. That would be a game changer. And the study is a very small price to pay. We should always be asking questions. And, in the legislature, studies is a way you ask questions and hopefully get good answers.
So absent from the final bill was a feasibility study that had been included in the Senate version but did not make it through conference committee, and that was a feasibility study to look at advanced nuclear reactors. You've always said that you're open to the concept. Why did this study not make it?
Well, I think it's a hard-hitting news report that we're having here, but the House refused to take it, and I thought that was a big mistake. We're telling people, and I think rightly so, that carbon emissions, climate change is the #1 threat to the planet. Whatever our concerns about nuclear, and they're real, storage of waste, the possibility of legacy facilities melting down, those are real concerns. But it is a carbon-free source. Without nuclear, we can't meet our 100% goals. So the study of advanced nuclear, or so-called modular nuclear, which other states are looking at, I think was a big miss for Minnesota. I think we should have done that. It was $300,000 in a budget, including all the components, of over $330 million. And I enjoyed working with my House counterparts, but I think we'll be back. And I mentioned earlier today, the state of Illinois just lifted its nuclear moratorium in its entirety. So lots of states that want the same type of things Minnesotans do are looking at nuclear. And to not study it, I thought, potentially prevents us from doing something that I think Minnesotans would want us to do and achieving our climate change goals.
These investments are possible because of a large budget surplus. It allowed for one-time funding to jumpstart the expansion of clean energy technology. Is it a big enough boost that these reforms will be self-sustaining, or in other words, is the transition to affordable clean energy in the long term, is it affordable in the long term?
I think our energy will be affordable, but I don't think it's enough investments just in this budget to make that transition. An example would be transmission. That's the big poles that run the wires throughout the state to bring energy from where it's generated to consumers like you and me. We have about $10 billion through the MISO grid coming in for our first tranche. That'll be a big help, but not enough. And the investments that we're making here are great starts, in some places really great starts. But I don't think that'll be the end of the state's need to partner with our ratepayers and our consumers. What we're really looking for, though, is the moment when the average Minnesotan says, it's in everybody's interest to use energy efficiency to benefit us, to reduce carbon emissions. And that's what I think they've already got in Norway, and that's what I hope we bring here to Minnesota, even if it'll take, in my opinion, another couple budget cycles.
Senator Nick Frentz, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
Likewise. Thanks, Shannon.
In May, the United States Supreme Court ruled unanimously in favor of Minnesota woman Geraldine Tyler in the case of Tyler versus Hennepin County. Hennepin County sold her condo to recoup property tax debt, but also kept all the proceeds from the sale rather than return the remaining equity to the homeowner. Senator Warren Limmer is sponsor of a bill that would repeal the law that has allowed this to happen, and he joins me now in the studio. Thank you for being here.
Glad to be here.
You introduced this bill in late April, several weeks before the Supreme Court ruled in the case. Was it this case that drew your attention, or did you become aware of this problem some other way?
I knew of the general idea, policy-wise, that the state had, but really the case that I read in a local newspaper is really what gave the focus to me of how that government policy can really affect individual citizens in a very tragic way. Ms. Tyler's case from Hennepin County was what was reported in a Star Tribune article earlier in the year. I did a little more research on it, started to write a bill regarding it. It seemed like it just is not a good policy to have, where, of course, state needs to have their tax money, but at the same time, there's extenuating circumstances. But the government should not take all of the equity of a homeowner.
To your knowledge, how widespread is the practice of this state keeping additional proceeds from a property sale when the owner is behind on tax payments?
Well, right now it's the law of the land since the Depression era. And quite honestly, it's a little troubling that it's gone this far. U.S. Supreme Court earlier this year, they decided 9-0. Now, can you imagine how polarized that Supreme Court is with other issues, but they all agreed on this constitutional principle. This is a government taking. When you take more than what the government is owed in taxes and you keep it for themselves or for the government purpose without any remuneration to the homeowner. Clearly, I saw that as a taking. Supreme Court agreed, and I'm hoping that we can change this law on Minnesota statutes.
Now, this law stems, you said, from the Depression era. Almost 90 years ago, it was passed in 1935. Has society changed in terms of how it views taxes and debts and property rights since that time?
Well, during the Depression, government needed money to keep employees employed. They needed to, who knows what kind of influence banks had on forfeiture laws. They certainly did on farming back then. But quite honestly, when you give government that opportunity to take more money or accumulate more money, they're going to do it. That hasn't changed in the way government reacts to getting funds for their government purposes. Sad to say. This kind of draws a bright line that says, government, you can only take what's rendered you, you know, that old phrase, render unto Caesar that which is his. This is exactly the same thing. You don't take more. You only receive and get the forfeited taxes that are owed.
According to Minnesota Public Radio, Minnesota is one of about a dozen states that has kept the proceeds following a property sale like this. In your view, then, are all of these cases examples of home equity theft?
Home equity theft is, as a term, a pretty harsh term when we're indicting government. But quite honestly, I think it's accurate. We as a government are taking things, money, value, equity in a home that is not owed to us. That's got to change. Now, as a quick background, counties give all sorts of methods to collect taxes if that person is in trouble in paying. They create payment plans. They give extended periods of time to make that payment. But despite that, there are still some people who just can't make that payment. And they should, if it eventually comes down to the point where you have to have a tax auction in order to get that money, any excess money should be returned to the homeowner, to that taxpayer. It'll help them in the next step in their life. We don't want to wring them dry and then have that opportunity to keep that money for a government purpose. That would be simply wrong and dishonest.
Have you considered what, if any, unintended consequences could arise from repealing this law? For example, if a property owner has abandoned their property and it's a public nuisance or an eyesore and tax dollars have to be used in order to remedy a situation, should anything like that be taken into account?
Well, an eyesore or a condemned property, that's not subject to a tax forfeiture. That's subject to the fact that it's an eyesore or it's something else. The government, and there's been plenty of case law, the government will pay for that property to be claimed by government. They'll give full remuneration. It's not a tax forfeiture where the government up till now keeps the balance at an auction. And so I think we've covered that area in law pretty well.
So attorneys for Hennepin County pointed to that 1935 state law that I mentioned previously. So now the Supreme Court has ruled. Clearly a revision to that law is now necessary. Is that what your bill then seeks to do, is just eliminate the statute that has allowed this to happen?
It's to repeal the statute, written in 1935. Now, can you imagine, written during the Depression? And quite honestly, I can only speculate. Government employees needed a salary source too in the Depression. I don't know if that was the impetus of a 1935 law. We don't really care about how or why. The problem is existing now. We should not take and we should prohibit government from keeping the balance, the equity balance, and return that to the homeowner after those property taxes have been paid in full as a result of a tax auction.
Although no action was taken on the bill last session, it was referred to the tax committee. And have you spoken with Tax Chair Ann Rest about this bill? Do you expect that this law change maybe will happen in the coming session?
I have not talked with Senator Rest. I was waiting for the court case to finally conclude. That happened almost simultaneously in the last week or thereabouts with the session ending. And we in the Senate, we don't usually like to write law knowing that there's a court case pending. So we'll go on to next February.
Senator Warren Limmer, thank you so much. The Health and Human Services budget for the next 2 years included $3.5 billion of the state's budget surplus to fund a number of initiatives that seek to improve the lives of children and families in Minnesota. Senator Melissa Wiklund, chair of the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, joins me now to talk more about it. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
This new law creates a new state agency, the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. What was the impetus for this change?
Well, I think over time we've learned that families today have had a lot of struggles in trying to connect with all of the programs that could be helping them and their children. And there's been a lot of discussion and work to analyze what would be a better structure to make it work better for families. So there was a report done 2 years ago about governance of early childhood. But really this goes back even further. When I was a freshman, I carried a bill to establish a Department of Early Learning, or Department of Early Childhood, basically, because we could see even 10 years ago that there were needs that weren't being met because the system is so complex. So it's really meant to put in place a better framework for families to be able to find the services they need, get access to them, have the people focused on helping families in the way that best suits their needs. And DHS is a very large agency, and right now this is a smaller component of it. But by bringing together not only DHS, but Department of Education programs that relate to early learning, there's one program from the Department of Health and then some from Public Safety. Bringing them all together will allow us to take a holistic approach to how do we address children's needs, basically, in Minnesota.
A dearth of affordable childcare programs has been alarming policymakers for years. The surplus has allowed for additional investments in the Child Care Assistance Program, as well as $316 million for Minnesota's Great Start program. Will these and other investments turn the tide for families who are struggling to find affordable childcare?
Well, I think they're going to have a significant impact. I think that one of the key priorities for me this year was to address the needs for families to be able to find childcare when they need it and to have access to high quality childcare so that their children are safe and healthy when they have to go to work. The impact of what we're putting in place, I think, will have a huge impact on not only families being able to find more options for childcare, because we're increasing the reimbursement rates for the Child Care Assistance Program. We're raising it to the 75th percentile, which is the federal government's recommendation. And by doing that, parents will have access to maybe 3 out of 4 providers, whereas today they have access to maybe 3 out of 10 providers. So it's a significant change. It will also help the providers themselves get, more closely reimbursed for the work that they do. The Great Start, this retention payments, those will be, I think, a game changer for providers. We've seen over the past couple of years, we've had the supportive retention payments in place, and providers receive a monthly stipend or monthly payment, and that has been allowing them to increase their compensation. The average child care worker in Minnesota makes only around $13 an hour, which is not enough for them to even live on. So, I think this will make a significant difference. It won't change things completely, and we will still need to apply more resources if we want to really bring things to the level that they need to be.
Equity is a theme that runs throughout this budget, and within this new law, there is a Health Equity Advisory and Leadership Council, an Equitable Healthcare Task Force, a Cultural Communications Program, an Office of African American Health, an Office of American Indian Health, and that's just to name a few. What do you hope will be the result of these efforts?
Well, I hope that by these efforts we are communicating that communities need to be a part of all of the solutions that we're trying to implement in Minnesota. I think through the Department of Health, through these the actual items that you listed, we will have ways to directly connect with communities where we're seeing the greatest health disparities. We know Minnesota has a lot of healthy people, and we have ways of increasing health, but we also see great disparities between white Minnesotans and BIPOC families. And so by specifically calling out these different programs, we're able to work with the communities directly to find the solutions. And that's the key, I think, is that we are asking communities, what do you need to better meet your needs in terms of health, education, access to services, what kind of services. And so that's my hope through all of these programs, that we will be meeting their needs in a better way.
What began as a healthcare affordability board that would have had the ability to impose fines in an effort to rein in healthcare costs has changed into a center within the Department of Health that will simply analyze healthcare costs. How might this analysis, this new information that will come from this center, be used to shape future policy?
Well, I'm really pleased that we are able to establish this center at the Department of Health. I think that we have in place today some resources to help us look at health economics, but this will really strengthen our ability to do it in a more in-depth and systemic way. What I hope to have come out of this is analysis that will lead us to better understand what is driving cost increases in our healthcare system, and then what are some potential solutions? How could we potentially address these increases in healthcare costs? And through the affordability board, we were hoping to have more of a mechanism to kind of address those drivers in a more tactical way, but I think that this center will give us the start we need to understand the environment and understand healthcare costs right now, and then we can work on, what are the ways we need to have in place to really put solutions into place.
One controversial provision in the new law is the extension of Minnesota Care to undocumented Minnesotans beginning in the year 2025. What is the rationale for providing subsidized health care benefits to people who live in Minnesota without documentation?
Well, the rationale for me is that I think that we should be a state where all Minnesotans who are of the qualifying income have access to a program that allows them to access health care. I think that in 2025 we will be able to say that for all low-income Minnesotans, if you qualify for medical assistance, you will be able to apply and be able to access meaningful health care. These are people who, in terms of expanding it to the undocumented, the people who are working in our communities, paying taxes. They are doing some of the most important and really urgently needed jobs in our communities. And today, for many of them, there are huge cost barriers to accessing medical care when they need it, and that's not right, and it's not good for. It's not good for people in living, healthy lives, nor is it good for our economy. We depend on people to go to work and be able to contribute, and this is a way to recognize that part of that is being able to access health care that you can afford.
There was also a plan put forward this session that would raise the qualifying threshold for Minnesota Care so that more people would be able to access the plan. What came out of conference committee in the end is an actuarial study to look into the concept of a single-payer health plan option. What needs to be learned?
Well, I think actually, a couple things came out of the bill. One is a actuarial study and analysis of universal health care system costs and benefits. This is something that has been discussed in the Senate for quite a long time, but we haven't been able to take action on it. The other thing that I think is also really equally important or more important is that we will be studying and doing an actuarial analysis for a Minnesota Care public option. That would be a specific way to address healthcare costs for people today who buy insurance, but they can't afford to use their insurance. So this puts meaningful language in place to study and determine the implementation plan needed to make that public option happen.
There's so much in this bill. We've only scratched the surface, but Senator Melissa Wiklund, I want to thank you for taking the time today.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate being able to talk about it. It's been a great session and an important bill for me to work on. So, thank you.
Join us again next week as we delve into more topics affecting Minnesotans. I'm Shannon Loehrke, and on behalf of all of us at Senate Media Services, thanks for watching.